Well, Danny Maki is a Syrian journalist born in Britain who's based in Damascus and reports from the government side of the front line. He's been on the outskirts of Douma today. So what has he been hearing about the alleged chemical attack in Douma last night?
The reports started coming in late yesterday evening from an area in Douma called Al Masakin neighborhood, which is quite a very populated area. And there were activists' videos and pictures showing what seemed to be children suffering from being hosed with water. And it was quite very, very distressing images, purportedly showing a chlorine attack yesterday evening. Now, it hasn't been completely confirmed, and Damascus has denied this unequivocally, stating that it's just part of the extra pressure being raised on Damascus in the Ghouta military operation from Western states and an activist within Douma. But the images were pretty clear that there was something which went down yesterday evening, and Douma has been under intense bombardment for the previous 4 days. During the time of the alleged chemical attack as well, the military operations continued, and there were still sounds of shelling and bombardment throughout the evening.
And just tell us about that intense bombardment. Why had it resumed?
It had actually resumed because there was a negotiation attempt between the Russians and Jaish al-Islam, which is ruling Douma. And after agreeing on several different points, one was for Jaish al-Islam to be evacuated to Jarablus as opposed to Idlib because of their intra-rebel conflict at the moment, which Jaish al-Islam is well into. Jarablus was actually in northeastern Aleppo, was the destination. What happened after that was the negotiation turned sour over the issue of handing over light to heavy weapons to the Syrian army. Now, the Russians, who actually brokered the talks initially, wanted for the weapons to be handed over immediately, and for whoever wanted to stay within Douma from Jaish al-Islam could do so under an amnesty, which the Russians would guarantee. And in addition to that, a new fighting brigade would be made for remnants of Jaish al-Islam to continue fighting with the Syrian army, and those who wanted to stay in Douma could do so as a local police force. Now, the problem was that Jaish al-Islam had changed one of their negotiators from the head of their political committee to one of their security officials, in a sign that they didn't really want the negotiations to go forward at that particular moment. And after stating that they didn't want to give their weapons over until a final political solution was made for the Syria crisis in general, the Russians gave them an 8 o'clock evening deadline to respond to, which they didn't. And from the next morning, at about 10 o'clock in the morning, the Russians and the Syrian army began a wide-scale offensive on Douma with a 24-hour period of intense bombardment.
And so what's happening today?
I mean, a lot of events have happened today after the alleged chemical weapons attack yesterday. There was intense shelling and bombardment over Douma from about 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the morning. It was the fiercest it's been since the beginning of the entire Ghouta operation. And at 8 o'clock in the morning, the operations paused temporarily for another meeting which was set to be held between the Russians, the Syrians, and Jaish al-Islam. And what I'm hearing now is that meeting has actually taken place in Al-Wafidain camp, which is next to Douma, and there have been immediate results from that meeting. Syrian state TV also reported that during the negotiation process, it would be the Syrians who would be taking the lead, the Syrian army. Now, what has happened at the moment is that Jaish al-Islam have met with the Syrians and the Russians, and a quick 15-20-minute meeting come back into Douma to get a list of all of the pro-government captives held within Douma. And there are set to be around 4,000 or 5,000 pro-government captives between military and civilians who were taken by Jaish al-Islam in Adra al-Ammaliyah and other areas since 2013. Now, the fate of those captives is of central importance to Damascus. Now, this does show that there is a big progression in the talks now, and this is possibly a prerequisite for bigger and more comprehensive discussions and talks, which are set to take place over the next couple of hours to define what will happen in Douma over the next period.
The journalist Danny Maki speaking to me from Damascus. You're listening to NewsHour from the BBC World Service.